Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to talk about fire safety. Fires, of course, can cause a lot of damage and they can take many lives. So, of course, we need to be aware of the dangers of fires. They could happen to anyone. And, of course, we need to have some, measures put in place to protect ourselves from fires. We're talking about fire safety tips from the pros, and in today's conversation, we've got a firefighter visiting Mrs. Johnson, and he's kind of checking out her home to make sure that the house has enough smoke detectors and stuff like that for fire safety.
Yeah, a smoke detector is that device that you have in your apartment or your home, and it senses smoke, and it emits this noise, whatever yours does. Mine kind of buzzes. It's really loud and irritating, and it's just warning you of possible fires so that you can put out that fire as soon as possible or get out of your apartment, too.
I did notice that smoke detectors are kind of a sleeping device or a way to help sleeping because when I was at my parents' home, they have fire detectors on the ceiling, and they have this little red light that flashes like every 30 seconds or so. So I would look at the red light flash, and then I would count 30 seconds to make sure the red light would come on again.
Oh, my goodness.
And I would keep doing that until I was so bored that I finally fell asleep. But, of course, I only did that if I had trouble sleeping.
That's better than counting sheep, I guess.
Kind of weird, that little red light flashing in the darkness.
Mine doesn't flash, but then again, I might need to change my batteries. So we're going to have this conversation between a firefighter and a homeowner, and then we'll be back and talk about some of these words and phrases. Essential fire safety tips from the pros.
Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. I'm Firefighter Davis from the fire department. I'm here for your scheduled smoke detector installation and fire prevention consultation.
Please come in. So, where would you recommend positioning the detectors?
We usually recommend installing a device in each bedroom, one in the hallway outside the sleeping areas, and at least one on every floor of the home. That setup gives you good coverage throughout the house and helps ensure early detection in case of a fire.
That sounds thorough. How frequently should we conduct maintenance?
You'll want to test them monthly. Just press the test button to make sure they're working properly. Also, you should change the batteries once a year. Oh, and dust can affect how sensitive they are, so a quick vacuum every few months helps.
I'll be sure to do that. Are there any other fire safety tips you can share with me?
Certainly. It's essential to have a fire escape plan in place. Make sure everyone in the household knows 2 ways out of each room, and establish a meeting point outside. Additionally, never leave cooking food unattended and keep flammable materials away from heat sources.
Thank you. This has been really informative. We'll definitely put these safety measures into practice.
My pleasure. Remember, early detection saves lives. Here's my contact information for future inquiries. All right, it's time for us to discuss the contents of today's lesson. We've got essential fire safety tips from the pros. If something's essential, it's very important, and these are safety tips, a little bit of information that they know about that they want us to know about. And, of course, firefighters are professionals or pros. A firefighter, of course, could also be called a fireman. But nowadays, of course, we have female firefighters as well, so we tend to use this word firefighter to include everybody. And he has gone to Mrs. Johnson's home, and he begins by saying, "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson." So we can tell from this that he's going there in the morning and not in the evening or the afternoon. Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. He introduces himself. He says, "I'm Firefighter Davis from the fire department." Okay, in the U.S., of course, we call it the fire department. I think if you're in the U.K., they say the fire brigade. But in the U.S., we say fire department. If there's a fire, you call the fire department so they can send a fire engine over to put out your fire. And he goes on to say, "I'm here for your scheduled smoke detector installation and fire prevention consultation." So he also tells her why he's there. I wonder if he's wearing a fireman's a suit, the raincoat and the hat and all that stuff with the hoses or whatever. I doubt it, but he says he's there for the scheduled smoke detector installation. So if something's scheduled, it happens at regular intervals. Maybe he goes there once every year or once every 6 months, whatever the time may be. And we did talk about what a smoke detector is, and we're talking about the installation, which means you place it where it's supposed to be and turn it on and make sure it works, like air conditioner installation, for example. And he's also talking about having a fire prevention consultation. A consultation, of course, is when you consult with somebody. You basically talk to them and give them some advice that you know about and they don't.
Right. Supposedly, he's the expert, and she's seeking more advice from an expert. I just had some guy come around to my house last week wanting to check my gas to see if they needed to replace or fix something up.
Well, that happened to me many years ago. It turned out to be a scam.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we heard that was going on. They come in and say, oh, there's something wrong with that. You need to get it fixed. You need to get it changed. But that was a scam. But again, that was years ago. Hopefully the guy who came to your house was legitimate.
Yes. I had been warned from my superintendent or the guy, the 管理员 at my building to be very careful of these guys who come by and want to constantly check your gas meter. But no, this was legit. They were doing the whole building, and it was scheduled, I guess, every 10 years they come by. It's mandatory. Anyway, she's very kind. She says, please come in. So where would you recommend positioning the detectors? If you position something, we usually don't use this as a verb in our lessons, but here it just means to place something or arrange something in a particular way or put it in a particular location. Where would you recommend positioning the detectors? Mine is up above. It's in the kitchen up above the door, the main door into my apartment. That's where mine was positioned. I didn't get to choose. It was there when I moved in. Did you decide where to position yours in your own apartment, Tom?
Well, actually, I must confess we haven't really installed them yet. We have them, but we haven't really figured out where to put them. I think this might be good advice. Use this as an excuse to go home and set those things up in case we have a fire.
It's a good reminder.
Indeed. So that's positioning. So again, as the verb is to position. For example, maybe you're kind of sweet on some girl in your class or something, so you work out a way to position yourself. Maybe you try to get the seat next to her or something so that you can talk to her or something like that. To place yourself in an advantageous position. So we want to position the detectors, put them where they could be most useful.
Typically, we would just use the word install. Where would you recommend installing the detectors? But I think it's really good to learn other verbs this way so you can kind of connect the two of them.
Right. Position can also be a noun. What is your position? Where are you? Something like that. And the firefighter here, or the fireman, says, we usually recommend installing a device in each bedroom, one in the hallway outside the sleeping areas, and at least one on every floor of the home. So that's a lot of smoke detectors. I don't know how much they cost, but if you have a big home, you're going to have them all over the place, which is fine. You'll have that feeling of safety or whatever. So yes, he says you should have one in each bedroom on the ceiling, also in the hallway outside the bedrooms or outside the sleeping areas. So there's a hallway in most people's houses that lead to the bedrooms. So have a smoke detector there, and then have one on every floor of the home. Here in Taiwan, I think most people live in apartments if you live in the cities, so you probably just have one floor. But if you live in the countryside, you might live in a townhouse or something like that where you have several floors. So he recommends having smoke detectors on each level or each floor of the home.
And then he says that setup gives you good coverage throughout the house and helps ensure early detection in case of a fire. Yeah, if you had one in all of those places, it sure would. When you use that word setup, it just means how something's arranged, maybe the equipment that you're buying, maybe you're going to set up a new home office. Your setup is going to be important. Do you want your computer facing the window or facing away from the window? You don't want the glare from the sun. That's important. And coverage just means how much of the area can be protected. So what's the range or the reach of what you're doing? What's the coverage? We often use this word coverage to talk about insurance. So what's your coverage like? It might be health insurance or dental insurance. What's your coverage? Well, they pay 60% of my bill or 40% is covered. It's that kind of usage here. So what's the area that will be protected if you have this kind of setup that he recommends?
Right, and it should be all through the house. And again, it helps guarantee or ensure early detection in case of fires. So if a little fire starts next to your bed or something, maybe there was a spark of electricity from the transformer or whatever, and it starts a little fire, the detector will start to go off and let you know a fire has started.
Yeah.
And you'll know to get yourself out of there as quickly as possible. And here's what the homeowner says, Mrs. Johnson. She says, that sounds thorough. Thorough here just means complete. It covers all the bases. How frequently should we conduct maintenance? So here we've got the verb to conduct. That can be used in many different situations, but basically it means how do we go about doing something, okay? Should we conduct maintenance? In other words, should we look at the smoke detectors from time to time to make sure they're working, to test the batteries or whatever? Yeah, should we undergo or should the detectors undergo maintenance? Should we do something with them from time to time?
Yeah, that's a good synonym, undergo, or maybe carry out. Perform is another word, execute. So if you're conducting something, you're just carrying out an action, you're performing a task, or maybe you're taking care of some sort of process. How frequently should we conduct maintenance? I realized I hadn't changed the batteries in my smoke detector when I cooked some smoky chicken wings, and I had smoke all throughout my apartment, and there was no sound.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, you should check your batteries, guys. I haven't checked mine for a while. The firefighter says, well, you'll want to test them monthly. I think that's a little overkill, but, of course, if you have family and pets that you want to protect, maybe checking your batteries monthly is a good idea. I would say check them at least every 6 months. But he said just press the test button to make sure they're working properly. Hey, they don't last forever. I've been in my apartment now almost 20 years. Well, this apartment, 15. Maybe I should get a new smoke detector. Also, he says you should change the batteries once a year. Now, here's the next bit of advice that I think is really good, and I hadn't thought about it. He said dust can affect how sensitive they are. So a quick vacuum every few months helps. When you talk about dust, you're talking about that really fine dirt, I would say, that, gets on top of everything, your books, your shelves, especially if you live in the city like we do. We've got a lot of pollution coming in the windows from all the traffic and the scooters, everything. And I live right next to the MRT, actually. So, yeah, dusting would be a good idea. And I have a vacuum that will reach up into high spots now, so that should be easier. What's a vacuum, and what does that mean to vacuum?
Well, here we're using the word vacuum as a verb. That just means to suck up all of the dust or other small items that are on the floor. I'm imagining here he's suggesting that they vacuum the entire apartment so there's not a lot of dust in the apartment. But here we're talking about a vacuum cleaner.
I think he's talking about vacuuming the smoke alarm.
Yeah, I was wondering that too. You could also dust it off with a moist rag or something like that to make sure there's no dust on the detector there. But of course, I think we should all vacuum our apartments at least once a week or something like that to keep the dust to a minimum. And he says, yes, vacuum the smoke detector or dust the detector every once in a while. Dust could also be a verb, to dust the furniture, to take a wet rag and wipe up all the dirt off the furniture. And he suggests doing that every few months.
That's good advice there. The homeowner agrees with that. She says, I'll be sure to do that. Are there any other fire safety tips you can share with me? The best person to ask for fire safety tips would be a firefighter. So why not take advantage of all his knowledge? He says, certainly, it's essential or vital, very important, to have a fire escape plan in place. This is something else I don't have. So you need to make sure everyone in the household knows 2 ways out of each room. Do you have 2 ways out of each room?
Most people don't. We just have the window, the door, but maybe some of us have windows. But here in Taiwan, of course, a lot of windows have the metal bars in front of them, so that's not really an option. So for most of us, it's probably just one way out of the room. You might have a couple of doors to your apartment, and you just need to know where those are. And yes, indeed, make sure you know where all the ways out of the house are. He also says establish a meeting point outside. So here, to establish just means to set something up, to determine it ahead of time. And yes, just to have everybody understand that, yes, if there's a fire and we get out of the house, we may go different directions and things like that. So just to make sure everybody's okay, let's meet at a specific point, at the alleyway down there under the street light there, where the yellow thing is there. Let's meet there.
Yeah, and then you can check if you've got everybody in your household together. Maybe you've left a pet behind or one of the younger kids isn't there. So, yeah, it's really important to establish that meeting point somewhere. Maybe the fire starts while you're not at home. So then you need to find a place where you can all group together and make sure everyone's okay. So additionally, he says, never leave cooking food that's on the stove or in the oven, cooking unattended. Don't leave that food and maybe go to the store. I've done that before, but just as I start to close the door, I think, I should pull out the plug. I shouldn't be, I was just boiling something. I thought, I'll be really fast. I'll come back. But it's best not to leave food cooking. If it's unattended, it means no one's watching it. It's being left without supervision. She left her kids unattended in a car while she went in to go grocery shopping. Meanwhile, her kids were sweating to death because it was really hot inside the car. So unattended, you'll see that when people leave things or even animals or their children, which is worse, behind without any supervision. So he also says we need to keep flammable materials away from heat sources. What's flammable?
Flammable means it can catch fire easily, okay, like newspapers or clothing and things like that. And this is probably good advice for the winter because during the winter, lots of people use those space heaters.
Yeah.
That got those little red ribbons or something like that.
I have a space heater.
Oh, you do? Okay. So if you get too close to that with, your clothes or something, they might actually catch fire. So yes, indeed, keep flammable materials away from heat sources. Now, here's what the homeowner says. Thank you. This has been really informative. We'll definitely put these safety measures into practice. Okay, if something's informative, well, it gives you a lot of information. You learned a lot about things you didn't know before, and she's going to put these measures into practice. A measure, of course, is just something you do to improve something. You could have new measures from the government to combat crime or whatever. And so here she's thanking the firefighter for coming by. And I would imagine that this firefighter is a pretty big, handsome, macho guy. So I would imagine Mrs. Johnson would next say, would you like to stay and have some coffee?
I doubt it. She is married, Tom. Her name is Mrs. Johnson.
Well, she might be divorced or something.
Okay, guys, before we get into trouble here, we're going to take a quick break and listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。来到我们多益单元都会跟生活的一些主题息息相关。像我们今天就要来谈一谈消防安全。那这个消防安全当然除了要自己注意不要玩火啦，或者是这个火炉上有火的时候不要离开啦，甚至现在还有比较积极的一种做法，就是不晓得大家的家里面是不是都已经安装了烟雾的探测器呢？这个烟雾探测器啊，是我们今天的对话主题，因为今天的对话是一个 firefighter， 一个消防员亲自到某一个这个屋子里面啊，跟屋主来做一个对话，就是要安装烟雾探测器。好，所以当然一开始的对话当中会有一些这个打招呼啦，这个互相啦来问候的这样子用语， 但是除此之外呢，我们在第一个消防员的地方特别注意一下，这个烟雾探测器出现在第3句。烟雾探测器就叫做 smoke detector， detect 是侦测的意思嘛，所以可以侦测到烟的这个烟雾探测器 smoke detector。重点是要安装，那安装真的就是我们像平常安装软体的一样的那个单字叫做 install， 只不过在这里我们看到的是名词 smoke detector installation， 而且前面有个形容词是 scheduled， 它是个过去分词，在这边当成是被预定好的，所以我们已经约好的。好，接下来呢，同样在第一个消防员第3句最后面，因为现在呢，消防员还要替屋主做一些这个防火咨询的服务。那这个咨询如果是对专家的一种咨询，并不是很单纯用 ask 用询问而是对专业人员的 consultation。 好，那现在就要预防火灾的这个防火咨询，还要安装烟雾探测器。所以 homeowner 第一个屋主这边就说啦，那现在可能探测器大概要装到什么地方呢？我们可能口语当中可能就会说where 就用 where would you put it， 你可能会放在哪里呢？其实它是一个特别强调定位位置的动词。在第一个 homeowner 第2句的地方，我们把 positioning 这个字可以抓起来，因为 position 它就是一个位置地点嘛，所以前面的 recommend 问消防队员说，你会推荐在哪里进行安装地点呢？这样看起来好像对话很正式，对不对？要不然我们口语真的会说 Where would you want to put it？ 你要把它放在哪里？好，再来第2个消防员，当然就是告诉他说，其实会建议每个卧室都要装一个 smoke detector， 甚至每一个楼层都要安装一个 detector， 因为这样才能够完整的覆盖到家里的每一个角落，哪一个地方失火了就可以完全的侦测到。在第2个消防员的第2句，我们先把有一个单字叫做 coverage这个地方抓出来，它就是所谓的覆盖的意思。因为 cover 这个动词就是覆盖嘛，你想想看，侦测的地方是不是可以侦测到哪里？那这样子的一个侦测动作，其实就是可不可以 cover 到每一个角落，所以这里的名词用 coverage。 后面呢有一个 throughout 的这个介系词一定要抓出来，因为等一下第2个 homeowner 会出现一个跟它很像的介系词。 throughout 这个介系词先看一下它的发音 throughout GH 是不发音的那这个介系词它强调的是遍及某一个地方，或者是遍及贯穿整个时间。我们有时候会说 throughout history， 在整个历史当中，或者是 throughout the place， 在遍及某一个地方。同样这句最后面 in case of 这个片语也可以抓出来它指的是以防万一如何如何，以免有火灾的时候。那接下来第2个 homeowner 就是我们刚刚说跟 throughout 长得很像的That sounds thorough， 最后一个字的 thorough 好注意发音thor T-H-O-R thorough O-U GH 还是不发音。这里的 thorough 呢则是一个形容词，它指的是很完整的意思。有时候我们做计划会希望考虑到所有的细节，所有的面向，我们就可以说这个计划是一个很完善完整的计划 A thorough plan 就可以用这个形容词。好，可是同样在第2个 homeowner 最后面第2句最后一个字的 maintenance 这边也要抓出来它指的是维修维护的意思。它的动词原形是 maintain M-A-I-N-T-A-I-N， 因为不管是所有东西房子机器都要 maintain， 都要去维修它。好，那第3个 firefighter 就回答啦，首先第1句 test them， 每个月要稍微测试一下。第3句 change the batteries， 每年要换一下电池。然后接下来的第4句呢 a quick vacuum every few months， 大概几个月要吸一下灰尘这就是基本的 maintain 的这个动作。好，当然接下来还要有一些很重要的一些防火的咨询啦，比如说第4个消防员就特别提到，其实就算已经安装了烟雾探测器，我们还是要事先制定一个火灾的逃生计划。在第4个 firefighter 的第2句，它有一个虚主词的句型it 是虚主词，真主词是 to have， 一直到句尾的地方，所以有一个安全的这个火灾逃生计划 it's essential 是非常基本而重要的。 还有第4句也很重要，在中间我们看到的 leave 加受词 cooking food 加受词补语 unattended， 在这边特别注意，第一 leave 在这里不是离开，而是遗留什么人事物成为什么样的状况。那这个状况的 unattended 中间的 attend 其实它有随时在旁边照顾的意思，所以如果烹饪食物的时候绝对不要离开哦，这个叫做 never leave cooking food unattended。 希望今天的对话对大家也有一些帮助。我是安娜，我们下次见。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're going to look at our useful expressions here. I wanted to warn everybody, these recommendations are using something called the subjunctive mood. And we use this particular way to talk about things in certain instances when we're talking about wishes. I wish I were taller, not I wish I was taller. That's incorrect. We use them in unreal situations. If I were you, I would study harder. Well, I'm not him. So here's another one, demands or suggestions. The teacher insisted that he be on time. Or maybe uncertainty or possibility. It's important that she come to the meeting.
Right.
Here's what's important, guys. You need to use the base form of the verb. You usually put a that in there, and we're using be a lot. But one of the things that I always try to teach my business clients is you should memorize some of these subjunctive trigger verbs. That's what they're called. And we're going to talk about some of them. You do the first one, Tom. Recommend.
Yeah, recommendations. Of course, you're telling somebody what they should do because you know about it and they don't really know anything about it. So here's the first thing, of course, you can use is the word recommend. I recommend that we gather more information before making a decision. So your company may have some sort of sales plan or something like that, but you're not quite sure how to implement the plan. So somebody in the meeting may say, well, I recommend that we get more information before we make a decision because we might make the wrong decision.
Notice here that we gather, you're using gather as the base verb. You've got the that there. It would remain the same regardless of the pronoun here. So I recommend that he gather. I recommend that she gather. I recommend that you gather. So that's the tricky part about subjunctive. Number 2, I suggest you back up your important files regularly as a precaution. Here are some of these trigger verbs: recommend, suggest, advise, demand, desire, insist, prefer, propose. If you go online and ask AI, it'll give you a nice long list. Try to memorize those.
Right. I would do this if I were you. If I were you, I suggest, or you should. You could also say that. I would advise spending too much time. I wouldn't advise. That's the negative there. I wouldn't advise spending too much time on social media. I think we hear that a lot, but most of the time it just goes in one ear and out the other.
True.
Kids are going to play with social media as much as they want to.
Okay, here's the discussion question. Tom, do you have a fire escape plan at home? If so, what does it look like? And if not, what are some steps you could take to create one?
Well, of course, we got 2 doors in the house. There's one on the first floor and one on the second floor. And the second floor one, of course, is closest to where we usually are. But if for some reason it's blocked, we can always go down to the first floor. And the other plan we have is to know where all our important documents are, like the household registration and the key to the safety deposit box.
Do you have a go bag?
Yeah, a go bag, exactly. And we know where it is. So if there is a fire, someone's supposed to go grab it and take it outside. And I would also advise maybe grabbing some hard drives from your computer, like your external hard drives with all your files backed up, and get that stuff out of the house because if the fire destroys your computer, you've lost all that information.
Yeah, precious things are usually lost in fires. Things that you can never get back, like photos that you don't have a copy of anywhere. So, yeah, my sister-in-law did something smart. She took all of her photos and put them up into the cloud so that at least they'd have those if they ever had some sort of disaster occur. I don't have a fire escape plan. I've had 3 fires in my apartment building already since I've been here. One was bad. I was out of the apartment for a week. But the other two were little electrical fires where it's just annoying. You have to go outside while the firefighters check everything. But the one, it was scary because I saw flames.
Oh, no.
And so you have to take this stuff seriously, guys. Make a plan, especially if you have a family, and have a way to save things that are precious to you. Have that go bag ready with everything important. And I love Tom's suggestion about putting hard drives into your go bag. That's a great idea.
Which would have all your documents and all your digital pictures. So, of course, you'll have those, but having stuff on the cloud makes things safe as well. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Thanks for joining us, and check out our extra information on YouTube and Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you again next time, and we hope you can stay safe from fires. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.